when the city of Slutsk was trying to prevail upon the Beis Halevi to become their Rav, Beis Halevi at that time apparently envisioned himself as being able to sit and learn, perhaps a Rosh Yeshiva. He wasn't ready yet to take upon himself the responsibilities of the Rabbanos, so he kept pushing off the city of Slutsk, telling them that he wasn't the right guy for the job, it's not him, move on. The story goes that they sent a delegation to the Beis Halevi, once again trying to prevail upon him how important it was, until ultimately one of the Balabatim turned to the Beis Halevi and said, Rabbeinu Rav, there are 30,000 Jews waiting for you in Slutsk. And to that, the Beis Halevi was shocked. He got up, says the Chafetz Chaim, he put on his frock, he put on his hat, and he agreed to go. 30,000 Jews are waiting, they need a Rav. Beis Halevi said, I can't avoid this any longer. Said the Chafetz Chaim, if this was the response of the Beis Halevi, 30,000 Jews are waiting, and the Beis Halevi says, I can't, there's nothing I could do, I'm forced. Onas al pi adibur, there's no option. 30,000 Jews are waiting. Says the Chafetz Chaim, imagine if 30,000 Jews were waiting for Mashiach. Imagine if 100,000 Jews were waiting for Mashiach. If the Beis Halevi couldn't stand up against 30,000 Jews, their desire, so alachas kama v'kama, you have to imagine the millions of Jews that we have waiting for Mashiach. How is it possible that the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't send Mashiach? Says the Chafetz Chaim, must be that we're not waiting. Must be we're not yearning. If we were waiting, if we were desiring, if we were yearning, so Mashiach wouldn't have an answer, wouldn't have an option, would be no choice. This is very much part of what we tried to focus on this Tisha B'Av. How so much of our avodah over the course of Tisha B'Av is developing, engendering, fostering within us that kivui, that desire, that pining for Mashiach. We quoted the Yalkut Shimoni. The Yalkut Shimoni says, "V'hoya b'yoyim ahu hine Elokeinu zeh kivinu lo v'yoyisheinu zeh Chazal ein biyad Yisrael el akivui kedai hein legeulu b'schar akivui." If only zechus that Klal Yisrael has is the kivui, the desire, the pining, the yearning for binyan beis hamikdash. Rebbeinu Shalom says, "Kedai hein legeula b'schar hakivui." It's worthwhile. I would bring them the geula just for the kivui alone. It's the pining, it's the desire, it's the yearning for Beis HaMikdash. That ultimately is what's going to bring Beis HaMikdash. And that's what this day is about. That's what Tisha B'Av has to be spent, not only for the 25 hours of Tisha B'Av, but 25 hours of Tisha B'Av has to remind us, has to be a focus that's going to overflow into the rest of the year. Is there going to be a kivui? Is there going to be a pining? Is there going to be v'hoya b'yoyim ahu hine Elokeinu zeh kivinu lo v'yoyishienu? Because ultimately, says the Chafetz Chaim, that's what's lacking. That's what's missing. How many times over Tisha B'Av do we mention the words of Rabbi Yaakov Emden, telling us that the one thing that's missing, it could be everything else is in line, but kedayu chet hagadol hazeh, that we're not misabel in Yerushalayim, that it doesn't bother us, we're not yearning for it. That ultimately is what keeping us in Galus. So we could say from today till tomorrow, we want Mashiach, Limhei Rabbi Yameinu, Yavo HaGoyel. Mashiach tzidkeinu, binyan beis hamikdash, v'mheir b'yameinu. But if we're not desiring it, if we're not shoyef, if there's no kivu, if there's no yearning for it, so says Rabbi Yaakov Emden, if we're not misabel Yerushalayim, if it doesn't affect us, it doesn't impact our lives, so the Gullus will just continue. We'll continue on year after year after year. It's interesting. Sfas Emes is bothered by a question that many of the Mefarshim are bothered by. The bracha that we make, whether it be in benching or davening, we always say, we bless the Rabbi, we give the bracha of B'nai Yerushalayim. B'nai Yerushalayim is the builder of Yerushalayim. So all the Mefarshei HaSiddur are bothered that this is l'chora, the wrong conjugation. It shouldn't be B'nai Yerushalayim, it should be Yivnei Yerushalayim. The Rebbeinu Shalom will build Yerushalayim. What does it mean, B'nai Yerushalayim? We just said in Nachem, Menachem Tzion u'boinei Yerushalayim. Boinei Yerushalayim, he's building Yerushalayim. We daven for a day where he will build Yerushalayim, Yivnei Yerushalayim. Says the Sfas Emes, I have another question. We all know, the Chazal tell us, anyone who's not zoiche to see binyan beis hamikdash biyamav kol dor she'ein nivne biyamav ki ilu nechra biyamav. If a person is not zoiche to see binyan beis hamikdash, it's as if beis hamikdash was destroyed biyamav. Says this Sfas Emes, how could it be? You know how many tzaddikim have lived their entire lives through Churban? Maybe you're going to tell me that these people lived lives that it was as if it was burned, it was as if it was destroyed biyameyan. And says this Sfas Emes, how is it possible? Ke'ilu nechrav biyameyan. Says this Sfas Emes, Klal Yisrael, Jewish history is accumulative. Kol Yemei Hadoreis Mitztarfin, and all the generations from the time of the Churban ad Hayom Hazeh, they all accumulate one with the other. Umiskansin Kol Ha'orei Shel Avodas B'nei Yisrael Yosruin Uyin LeGeula. And every person's avodah, every person's day, every person's life goes into the bank, leading up to a zechuya, is enough zechuya, is a Klal Yisrael is zoiche for geula. Ki hayala al das is a Sfas Emes, shedor ha-geula yiyakol kach re'uyim bizchosim bilvad le-geula. Do you think, says the Sfas Emes, that the door of geula is going to be more worthy than any door before them? On Shabbos I spoke about how we have to believe be'emunah shlema, that we have it within us to be zoiche to geula. How the chait of the Meraglim wasn't that they thought the Rabbeinu Shalom forsake them, but that they thought that because of their chatam they weren't ra'oi for the Rabbeinu Shalom to bring them to Eretz Yisrael. And now for 2,000 years we continue this bechiyah shel chinam, thinking that we're not ra'oi. So we have to believe we're ra'oi. So many people ask me after, but how could you possibly say we're ra'oi? Look at all the dairas before us that obviously weren't ra'oi. We are going to be ra'oi. We're the greatest generation to live since the Churban. Says the Sfas Emes, ki hayala al adash dor ha-geula yekol kach re'uyim bizchusim bilvad le-geula. You think that your dar, or the dar that's going to be zoiche to geula, is going to be on a spiritual level beyond anything we've seen in the past 2,000 years. But it's a cumulative. It's not us against the Chafetz Chaim. It's not us against Rabbi Akiva Eiger, against the Chassam Sofer, against Ravina Rav Ashi. But Ravina Rav Ashi laid a foundation. We have the Rashba, the Ritva, the Ramban, and the Rambam. Rabbi Akiva Eiger, Chassam Sofer. We just need a little bit more. A little bit more. Rak shezachos kol dor v'dor oizeru mevi me'ad binyan beis hamikdash v'habinyan nimshach kol yimei agalos k'maimer bani Yerushalayim. And the Rebbeinu Shalom is continuously building beis hamikdash, building Yerushalayim. Every single dar, every day, every ma'asim tovim, every zechus of every member of Kal Yisrael contributes to that binyan beis hamikdash, and that's why, says the Sasemis, we say Boine Yerushalayim, through the zechuyos of Kal Yisrael we build, and we're currently building. V'zeu shomar, and this is what it means, he says. Shekol dor she'einu misayeh levinyanoi, any generation that doesn't contribute, that you haven't added any contribution to binyan beis hamikdash. She'enoi nivne biyamav. What does it mean, nivne biyamav? It means that your days, your life cannot be added to binyan beis hamikdash. You didn't contribute. You didn't add. Your yomim came and went, and there was no contribution made to beis hamikdash. She'enoi nivne biyamav. Your days didn't help build beis hamikdash ki'ilu nechrav biyamav. Realize that your days contributed to destroying Beis HaMikdash. Boine Yerushalayim, says the Sasemes, the Rebbeinu Shalom is building. He's in the state of building right now. Every zechus is one step forward. One more brick. One step closer to Geul. But the Chassam Sofer zooms in a little bit further. And the Chassam Sofer tells us that it's not simply your yomiv, that if you use your days appropriately, you will be able to be zoiche, you're contributing to Geula, you're contributing to Beis HaMikdash. Says this Chassam Sofer, unbelievably based on a psukim in Yeshaya. The pasuk says in Yeshaya, Hamazkirim es Hashem al domi lachem. Says the Mitzudas David, what does this mean? Ki'ilu hanavi, Yeshaya hanavi is telling Klal Yisrael, Atem hamisablim al Tzion, you that are being misabel on Tzion, you that are mourning avelus on Tzion, lehazkir amakam al binyanim lo yehei shtika lahem. Don't be quiet, says Yeshaya hanavi. Lo yehei shtika lahem, ele hisablu, continue to mourn, v'hazkiru es Hashem. Continue to mourn and remind the Rebbeinu Shalom about Churban. V'loisanichu es Hashem lishtoik milvnaisa, and don't let go until He agrees to build it. Says the Chassam Sofer, you know what it means, Boine Yerushalayim? The Rebbeinu Shalom is building. Do you know what He uses to build? You know what the building blocks that the Rebbeinu Shalom uses for binyan beis hamikdash? Habichia v'hatzar shel avilei tzion hamisablim. The cries, the pain, the tears of the misabli Yerushalayim, that is ultimately what helps binyan beis hamikdash. As we quoted from the Shloah HaKadosh, the Shloah said, we can't commemorate Tisha B'Av on Shabbos because binyan b'Shabbos is aser. And the Avelus of Beis HaMikdash is Boine Yerushalayim. That's what builds Beis HaMikdash. Kol HaMisabel Yerushalayim Zoiche V'roya, not V'yira V'roya B'simchasa. Because the Avelus itself is the binyan. So the Chofetz Chaim says, if we were waiting, if we were Kavinu Lach, there's no doubt that the Mashiach would come. If the building blocks were there, if Avelus is the building blocks of Beis HaMikdash, being Mis'abel in Yerushalayim is the beginning of the answer. That's how we're Zoiche. If it's the Kivinu Lach v'Haya B'Yoyim Ahu, Hine Elokeinu Zeh Kivinu Lo V'Yoshienu Kedayu Zechos Shel Kivoy. Live noise Beis HaMikdash. If that's all we need, so it must be we're not waiting. So Tisha B'Av has to help us wait, has to help us yearn, has to help that pining. So we could define ourselves as people that are mis'abel Yerushalayim, not one day a year, but throughout our lives. There's something missing, there's something lacking. There's something we're looking, we're mitzapel Yeshua. It's not a one day a year occurrence. So why is it? Why is it that the building blocks of Beis HaMikdash, as the Chassam Sofer says, are made me'abechiyah v'hatzar? Why is it that the way to rebuild Beis HaMikdash is through the mourning of Beis HaMikdash? Why is the only way to access Geula and Beis HaMikdash if I mourn over the lack of Churban Beis HaMikdash? What Chazal are telling us is, we lost Beis HaMikdash because we didn't appreciate it. And we didn't appreciate it because it's hard to appreciate living with Gilui Shechina unless you've lived Behester Panim. And therefore, Klal Yisrael didn't appreciate it, and we were able to go about our lives and ultimately devolve to Gilei Rayas, Ritzicha, Shrichas Damim, Avodah Zarah. Why? Because we couldn't imagine a life with Hester Panim. We couldn't imagine a life of confusion, the likes of which we live. We couldn't imagine a life with darkness and gloom and sorrows the way that we experience now. Klal Yisrael couldn't envision it. And therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom says, I have to show you what Hester Panim is, so that you'll appreciate Gilui Shechina. You appreciate what it means to have Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbeinu Shalom destroys Beis HaMikdash with the hope that we'll appreciate. Now we understand what life without the Shechina is. Now we know we need life with the Shechina. We need life with Ha'ara. We need life with Hashras HaShechina. But if the Rebbeinu Shalom gives us a life without Hashras HaShechina, we say, oh, not so bad. We can handle this. Not so difficult. Why would the Rebbeinu Shalom rebuild? The one thing that brings our Geula is the Mitzapin Yeshua, the Avelos, because the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to see one thing. He wants to see that we can't handle living in a world without Hashras HaShechina. We can't handle living in a world of darkness. We can't handle living in a world of Chil Shem Shamayim. And if we're mis'abel that, so then the Rebbeinu Shalom says, now you appreciate Beis HaMikdash, now you appreciate Hashras HaShechina. So the way that we take a Tisha B'Av into the rest of the year is by taking those moments of terrible Chilul Hashem, those moments of pain, the moment of tsar, a moment of Eretz Yisrael under attack, a moment of terrible Chilul Hashem where a world around us is advocating cultures which are totally antithetical to the Torah. These are all Chilul Hashems, and these are part of living in a dar of a Hester Panim. And rather than kvetching and sighing and, oh, Nebuch, Chaval, what happened to us? The world has gone nuts. Rather than complaining, we say, this is what it means to live in a world of Hester Panim. And that turns that into Avelis al Yerushalayim. It turns those moments into Mis'abel al Yerushalayim. Then that becomes part of our lives as the Chassam Sofer, a life of building Beis HaMikdash. The more we tell the Rebbeinu Shalom we can't handle living in a world of Hester, the more we earn the right to live in a world of Ha'ara. Ultimately, that's what Tisha B'Av has to teach us. That the world that we live in is a world of darkness and confusion. And until we appreciate that there's another option, that there's a reality of living with Hashros Hashchina. And until we beg the Rabbeinu Shalom to give us that reality, until we could say, Kivinu Lach, we desire it, Rabbeinu Shalom. So this existence will continue. Let us take the lessons of Tisha B'Av, incorporate it into our everyday lives. Try to build lives of Kivinu Lach, of desiring the Rabbeinu Shalom, desiring more, not being satisfied with a world of Hester Panim, with a world of darkness and confusion, desiring a world of light, a world of Hashros Hashchina, a world of Karbanos and Beis Hamikdash. With that, we'll be Zoicha V'Roya B'Simchasa.